Good evening. Thank you for coming to tonight's program. My name is Jacob Bartko. I am the Vice President of Operations here at the Jefferson, and it is my pleasure to kick off tonight's Doris Becker Lecture Series event. So thank you for coming. First, a few housekeeping items. On your way in, one of our helpful volunteers or team members may have presented you with an index card and a golf pencil. We invite you to write your question down and pass that index card to our volunteers who will be collecting the questions as the presentation begins drawing to a conclusion. First, penmanship. The neater your questions are written, the better the likelihood our moderator can read them. Second, we do ask you to keep your questions brief and concise so that we can get to as many as possible. And third, do feel free to jot down more than one question. That's not a problem at all. Now on to our upcoming events. This upcoming Monday, October 7th, join Dr. Andrew Roth, JES Scholar in Residence, for his lecture, From the Fabled 60s and the Birth of the Culture Wars to the Politics of Polarization in the Presidential Election of 2024. And that lecture is at the Lincoln Community Center Library in Fairview.
What day?
That is Monday, October 7th. Next, Wednesday, October 9th, see Dr. Michael DeSanctis for a richly illustrated lecture on famous Florentine Michelangelo, and that is at the Harbor Creek Township Building. And lastly, if you haven't heard, we kick off our 16th annual Global Summit Speaker Series on Thursday, October 17th with Liz Cheney, moderated by Sister Joan Chittister at the Bayfront Convention Center. So be sure to get your tickets to that today. They are almost sold out. You can see the full programming lineup and Global Summit events on our website. That's jeserie.org. Now, if you're not already a JES member, please consider becoming one. If you have any questions on membership, if you'd like to sign up or renew your membership, please see one of our team members after the event tonight. And finally, with thanks to our president, Dr. Furky Ferrati, to the entire JES team and the JES's Board of Trustees, I would like to welcome our partner, the Hagen History Center, with whom we are proud and excited to be offering tonight's event. To introduce tonight's speaker and program, Tom Hagen and Jeff Kidder.
Thanks, Tom.
Good evening, everyone. So great to see a packed house. As you probably saw, we sold out this evening with 400 individuals. Just a lot of interest about what's happening on historic West 6th Street. This evening is the conclusion of our quarterly lecture series, the Doris Becker Lecture Series, generously underwritten by her son, Colonel Mark Becker. We started the year with the history of chocolate in February with food historian Joyce White. Our spring lecture was Jackie Kennedy, Secret Service agent Paul Landis. Summer lecture was the CEO of Falling Water, Justin Gunther. And I think we're going to finish with a bang this evening. In so many ways, Jeff Kidder and Tom Hagen really don't need the level of introduction that we normally give because they've really become synonymous with historic preservation here in Erie. Virtually every iconic preservation project that you can think of that's taken place in the last 10, 20, 30 years, they've probably had a hand in some way. They really act as a sort of a dynamic duo because so many of the projects they've done together. Outside of 6th Street that we're going to be talking about, that would include the Armory, Puffer Belly, Gideon Ball House, Tibble's House, the list goes on and on. They both have received the state's most prestigious honor, the Lifetime Achievement Award for the embodiment of their work from Preservation Pennsylvania, called the Otto Haas Award. Tom Hagen in 2015 and Jeff Kidder in 2023. Before I invite them onto the stage, though, I just wanted to really contextualize what's happening here in Erie. Jeff's going to give you a little bit of information and the background about the Newport Restoration Foundation. But the organization aside, those of you that have been to Newport, Rhode Island, or are familiar with it today, know that it's a town with beautiful architecture, really, really expensive homes, and it's just sort of a glamorous summer destination. What you might not be aware of, though, is that the city fell on hard times in the 1960s, really hard times. And it got worse. In 1973, the Navy pulled the Atlantic Fleet and moved it to Norfolk, Virginia. Unemployment skyrocketed to 20%. Colonial homes were completely boarded up. They were literally giving them away. So philanthropist Doris Duke, who had a home in town, she actually had multiple homes all over the globe, decided to take it upon herself to start purchasing the colonial homes one by one and restoring them. And she put them into a foundation with the idea that they would be rented out, market rates, and a self-perpetuating model. They wrote a book about it called Extraordinary Vision. So Tom Hagen was familiar with this model and decided to take a trip to Newport, visit with the Restoration Foundation, learn how it was done, and return to Erie immediately buying properties. I'm sharing all this with you more than just the background. I have researched this pretty extensively myself. I have yet to find another model, not that it's a duplication, but where this exists anywhere in the United States, coast to coast, and that was created in the 1960s, and it's happening again right here in Erie, Pennsylvania, thanks to the incredible vision of Tom Hagen. So I'm very pleased for you to hear this presentation of what they've been up to for the last, 5 years roughly, but it's the embodiment of a project that very much has the potential to help change the trajectory of this community. And with that, Tom Hagen and Jeff Kidder.
Wow, what a group. Thank you all for coming. We've been at this 6 years, Cal, and we are often stopped. People will stop when we're out on the street on 6th Street and talk to us and oftentimes thank us. And we're so grateful for that. It's wonderful to have fellow citizens be appreciative of some of the work that we're doing. I'd like to say that this was all pre-programmed, that we had a plan that we were going to put in motion and do all of these things. But quite frankly, it really came about through the work we did at the Hagen History Center in changing the campus, revitalizing the campus under Cal's direction, and the Wood Morrison House. And when we got done and looked to the east and saw the condition of some of the buildings on 6th Street right next to this wonderful looking history campus, we figured maybe we should start doing something. And so it kind of launched from there, and then finally we did put together a plan of the things we wanted to do. We've been focusing on West 6th Street, which, as you may know, is an historic district. It's called the West 6th Street Historic District. It's now 40 years old. It was approved by the National Trust for Historic Preservation in 1984. It runs from Perry Square to Gridley Park. It includes both sides of 6th Street, the north side of the 200 block of 7th Street, and Garden Court, which runs from 6th to 7th, Cherry to Poplar. There are about, I think, somewhere around 27 houses in Garden Court that were built between about 1908 and 1930. We don't pay a lot of attention to that because they take care of themselves and they do a great job keeping up their properties. So we concentrate on the others. altogether, the historic district originally had 117 buildings. 14 of them were considered intrusions, buildings that were less than 50 years old or didn't have any architectural merit, and so there were 103 in 1984. Today there are 97 historic buildings left and a total of 109 buildings. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to take us through some of the 30-some buildings that we have worked on, and we still have more in the pipeline. But Jeff will lead us, and I'll comment on who some of the people were that lived in these houses. Really, the industrial elite of Erie from about the late 1800s to the first half of the 20th century lived in many and built many of these houses. So Jeff, let's get started.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Before we get into the details about what we've been up to, we really wouldn't have anything to talk about if the Erie County Historical Society hadn't decided to sell their building on State Street and move to the Watson-Curtsey Mansion on 6th Street, which is in the left there. And I show this as the way the campus looks today, and now the Hagen History Center. But just 10 years ago, that's what the Watson-Curtsey Mansion looked like. It was pretty tired. The Historical Society had taken over the Erie Historical Museum property, but realized they couldn't take care of 3 properties, so that's why they sold State Street and actually helped the Art Museum do their expansion. So 10 years ago, the Watson-Curtsey looked like that. Oops, sorry. That's what it looks like now. The carriage house looked like that, and now it's the visitor center for the campus. Wood Morrison House, which the Historical Society tried to buy for quite a few years, and thanks to Tom's help, was actually able to add it to the campus, and that's what it looked like, and that's what it looks like now. So all this was going on in the heart of the historic district, really great improvement to the neighborhood. And the Wood Morrison House is kind of where this idea that we're going to talk about tonight actually started from. And that was because while we were renovating the Wood Morrison House here in late summer, fall of 2018, what we now call canal side townhouses were right next door, 30 feet away, pretty tired, pretty run down. Somebody had started to do some work to the building, was starting to kind of erase the architecture of the building, removing the detail, removing the brackets, covering stuff up with aluminum, and to the point that I went into dumpsters and back and grabbed some of the pieces, hoping someday to have a chance to put it back together, not knowing it was going to be a lot sooner than I had hoped. But this is when we started talking about the idea of the Historical Society is not in a position to just start buying up all the buildings around them. It wasn't in their mission. They didn't have the resources. So that's where this idea of Tom and the Newport Restoration Foundation model kind of started. So that is really the beginning of it. Now this is, they have a great website, Newport Restoration Foundation, and Cal's already kind of explained what they're about, but they have 79 buildings in Newport, one big mansion on the ocean. The rest are all, late 1700s, early to mid 1800s buildings that weren't being preserved in the 60s and 70s. And so now they have them, they maintain them, they rent them out, all of them as apartments or rental housing, and the income stays in the foundation and maintains them. And they have a whole repair crew, carpentry crew, painting crew, and that. So when we went there, we got to see some of these buildings and was, pretty impressed with their efforts. So this idea of the West 6th Street Historic District, as Tom said, was about 100 buildings, and these are the buildings that now we control, but this is what they were looking like 5-6 years ago. These are all before photos. Great buildings, pretty much all of them had been turned into either apartments or offices. Just people that owned them didn't really have the ability to maintain them as they should. So that's where the idea started. We're gonna do a little tag team here. We're gonna talk about a building. Tom's gonna talk about the history of it a little bit, then I'll talk about what we did. So the very first one that was purchased is what we call Canal Side, the one right next door to the campus. And that was purchased late December 2018. So not quite 6 years ago, and that's where it all started.
Yes, these buildings are of Second Empire style, in case you're interested in what the building style is. They were built in 1875 by a German immigrant builder. He turned into be a contractor and brick mason by the name of John Kuhn. In fact, the buildings were originally called the Kuhn Block. He was active in politics in Erie, Democratic politics. He was chairman of then what they called the Select Council of Erie City Council. He built the Soldiers and Sailors Home. He had bought the property from the widow of Leverett Morrison of the Morrison House. They were the parents of Captain William Morrison, who was the last Morrison to live there. He was the last captain of the Wolverine. And her name was Missouri Morrison. She went by the name of Sue, however. She bought what ran through the middle of this property was the Erie Extension Canal from 1844 to 1871 when it was closed up. And William L. Scott, who owned it, sold the property in 1872 to Mrs. Morrison, and then she in turn sold it to John Kuhn, who built these two buildings. Jeff?
So this is what it looks like today, but this is what it was when we started. Two buildings, each building had two townhouses, so it was 4 single-family homes, basically 2 duplexes. Each building had 10 apartments in them at this point, so there were 20 apartments total, and painted, a lot of the detail gone, porches added, windows replaced, asphalt shingled roofs, and there's another view of it today, where we removed all the paint, put a slate roof back on it, replaced all the missing architectural detail, windows. This was a big project to take on for the first one, and we learned a lot from this. But it's one of those where you'll see several of these where we touched everything, inside and out, 100%, brought it up to code, all the finishes, and try to respect the original designs of the buildings, but putting apartments in, there are 12 kitchens, 12 bathrooms, 12 of everything. And you'll see on almost all of these buildings, you're going to see they were heated with boilers, either steam or hot water, radiators, no air conditioning. And that's the challenge we have with these buildings is we put in forced air heating and cooling, ductwork, just all new plumbing, all new electrical, all new everything. So another view of what it was and what they look like now. We started trying to use some more modern materials, replacement materials for wood and stuff, but we soon found out that there's nothing better than the real stuff. So we went back to wood. If it's wood, we use wood, brick, slate, and the interior. I'll show you some of that. But 2 pairs of the front doors were there, 2 pairs were gone. So before and after, and we had 2 pairs made. Schutte Woodworking here in town made them identical to the old ones. The backs, this is kind of a good shot. The buildings weren't just tired, the properties were tired. Broken concrete, dirt, mud, overgrown landscape, additions. So we've cleaned those up. If we had to add stairs for egress, which we had to do, we kept them inside the building rather than tacking them on. But you can see here a couple interior shots of before and after. Again, if the original material's there, we try to keep it, but kind of a typical condition, cleaned up. All of these apartments that we're getting are probably, well, from 1946 up into the 80s or 90s. And this is pretty typical of what we're finding in a lot of these buildings. And people were living here just right till we bought it. And these are kind of our typical approaches to kitchens, courts and modern cabinetry and appliances. Again, bathrooms get improved. And then another view of the outside. So I like showing that one because that's where we started. And as we said, it's about 5.5 years since the first property was built. And now today, we have a total of 35 buildings. And you'll see most of them are 6th Street. Some are a little bit away. 22 apartment buildings, a couple mixed-use buildings, 7 office buildings, a couple single-family homes. So altogether, now we're probably up to about 100 apartments. Either ones that we fully renovated or ones that we've gotten that are still habitable and we're going to get to them at some point, but we keep people in them. It's better to have them occupied than sitting empty. So the next one is just down the street, Addison Leach House, another Second Empire design.
Actually, first I'll just mention one thing about Canal Side. The houses, the duplexes were built in the old canal bed. So they didn't have to do much excavation, if any. And so the basements are anywhere from 12 to 15 feet deep. They're really huge basements because of that situation. And there's a barn behind the Wood Morrison house next door. It's kind of between Wood Morrison and these 2 duplexes. That was a barn that housed mules that pulled the barges on the canal. And that barn goes back to the 1850s. Now, on Addison Leach, this was part of the deal when we bought the 2 duplexes. We got the Addison Leach house. It was built in 1870. It's a Second Empire style. It was built by, for Addison Leach, who was a lieutenant colonel in the Civil War. He was born in Leechburg, Pennsylvania, went to Allegheny College, and came to Erie as an investor and a part of a family that owned Anchor Transportation Lines and grain elevator. And the grain elevator has a connection because he owned thousands of acres of land in North Dakota. And he was part of the Constitutional Convention in North Dakota in 1889 that gave it statehood. But the family, after his death, the family continued to live there for a total of 72 years. Like this house, like many of them, the old families left around World War II, just before or early in the war or right after the war. And that's when most of them became apartments.
So here it is before as we got it. You'll see a common trend here where brick buildings got painted, and we go through a lot of effort to get the paint off because brick is a nice maintenance-free material unless you paint it, and then you got to keep painting it. So this was converted into 6 apartments back right around World War II, 2 on each floor. And here's the efforts. We use chemicals. Do not sandblast brick. It's all through chemicals, controlled, and followed all the guidelines. But this is it during the process. The front steps, stone and brick. The front porch is a later addition. It's not an original design, but we kept it as it is part of the history of the building. But there it is before, and this is what it looks like now. And you can just see remnants of the old architecture, but deteriorating. And it probably, if we hadn't got there when we did, this would have fallen down or been knocked off and pressure treated, wood porch put up and deck. But we were able to save the porch and repair the bottom, keep everything else with it and put it back together. We find this a lot, the buildings where the high detail is hard to maintain and doesn't get maintained, and gutters leak, and water's the worst. Water and humans are the 2 worst things for buildings. And some of these buildings have had, both working at them. But this is a condition we found it in. We repaired it all. put slate roof back on it, copper. We use slate and copper a lot, built-in gutters. We pretty much now use cypress for our wood replacing material. It's a good rot-resistant natural wood. Same here. And even just, you notice up here with, it's an arched window, but they put a rectangular square window in the arched opening. So we try to reverse some of that and, get new windows in that fit the openings. And a lot of the buildings and windows have been replaced over time, and we put in either Marvin or Pella windows, so we have insulation value. And over the last 20, 30 years, these companies have really made an effort to provide a product line of windows that replicates historic detail. So, these are simulated divided light windows where it looks like a true divided light window, but it's not. And then even just the colors too. We try to research what's appropriate colors for each era of architecture. This was the one old photo of the interior of the house back when Leaches lived there. And this would have been the living room, parlor. And when we got it, that was all gone. The original staircase was gone. When they converted into apartments, they basically just put, a modern generic stair in. And so this is one where we put in brand new stairs, front and back, to meet code. And we put 5 apartments, two, and 1 across the top, but saved as much material as possible. So this is just how they clean up kitchens, typical kitchens, new kitchens, same bathrooms, and another view. The one change architecturally to the outside beside the porch is at some point this chimney and fireplace was added on, but we kept it because it's another part of the history of the building.
This is the Scheidenhelm House. Now, that's a name that not too many of us are familiar with, or if any of us. It was known for a long time in more recent years as the law office of Jim McDonald. And I must say, this house probably we had the least amount of work to do because Jim took such good care of it before he sold it to us. And it was in really good shape. It was built in 1918. It's craftsman style, and a very prominent Pittsburgh architectural firm designed it, Alden and Harlow. They did some other buildings in Erie over their career. The library building on Perry Square, the Masonic Temple building, Luther Memorial Church were designed by Alden and Harlow. And actually, this building was featured in a book about Alden and Harlow that was put together in Pittsburgh, a retrospective of their work. Albert Scheidenhelm came to Erie from Illinois, and he was president of the Pittsburgh and Erie Coal Company. And as you may know, that was one of the subsidiaries of William L. Scott, who at one time was Erie's richest citizen. The Scheidenhelm family lived there for 50 years, and I'm not sure whether there was somebody in between, but Jim McDonald's law office was in there for 32 years. So the inside is pretty pristine. It wasn't broken up into into small rooms like many of the places are, and it was, as I said, in really good condition.
So this is what it looks like today. This is how it was when we got it. Again, it was in generally good condition. All we did do it was clean the brick, paint it, do some roof repairs, put an accessible ramp on the back, an accessible restroom in it, so it was up to current code. And this, right after it was built, Architectural Record was a national publication, and they featured the house. And then this is a photo from right after about 1919, after it was done. The only thing that's really changed is it had an open porch here on the side, and when it became offices, they filled the arches in, but unless you see the photo, you don't really know that. But again, that's just been a great, nice little house, and we were able to get renovated fairly quickly and get Elderkin and another attorney office moved in there. So it was a really pretty easy transition.
This is the Alex Jarecki house. The Jarecki family had 7 houses on West 6th Street at one time. This is a Jarecki family that came over from Posen, Prussia. It's now part of Poland. In around 1858, I think it was, and the father of the family was a jeweler and involved in jewelry, and so one of the family broke off and was in the jewelry business. We all, I think, remember Jarecki Jewelers, but then in let's see, when was it? I have it here. 1872, they started the Jarecki Manufacturing Company. Before that, for a number of years, it was known as H. Jarecki. And they became very, very big manufacturing company. In fact, they were among the real powerhouses in industrial Erie in the late 1800s, early 1900s. At the turn of the 20th century, they had the largest brass foundry in the world. Their main headquarters, their main plant, is where the ballpark is. It was on East 9th Street between French and Holland. They also had a foundry at 12th and Cascade. They got started really making pipe, iron pipe and brass fittings and so on for the oil industry down near Titusville. But they became a very big part of the Erie community. Alex Jarecki, who had this house built in 1911, was the president of the company from 1901 until he died in 1941. The house was designed by a very prominent Cleveland architect by the name of Frank Mead, who was an MIT classmate of Mr. Jarecki's, and so Alexander Jarecki really brought him to Erie. Alexander Jarecki's wife came from right across the street. The address on this house is 305. His wife came from 306, which is across the street, and it today is known as the Catholic House of Gannon University. But it was then the home of James McBriar, and his daughter Lucy married Alexander Jarecki. The Jareckis lived there until Mrs. Jarecki died, and then it was sold to the then Ladies Catholic Benevolent Association. I think they call themselves now the Loyal Christian Benevolent Association, an insurance company, a life insurance company. They sold it to them in 1946. They were there for 37 years, and Gary Shapira's law firm was there for 37 years when we acquired the property.
So this is what it looks like today. This is what it was when we got it. It's one of those houses he just always drove by. Inherently it was interesting, but it was just kind of dark and dirty. And Shapira's took good care of it over the years, but at the end here, it just was needing a little cleanup. So you can see the brick. It's naturally a brown brick. What's been interesting with some of these properties is we've gotten to know, or they've reached out to us, descendants of different families. So the great granddaughter of Alex Jarecki, who now lives in Colorado, reached out, or Tom and her started to communicate, and she came to town and brought us a box of stuff, and there were a bunch of photographs in there. And because this was her great grandparents' house, and we'll talk about her grandparents' house later, but we had this photo, and photos are great because the house was only 5, 6, 7, 10 years max old here. And But you can see the shutters there that weren't there when we got it. This whole detail of the front porch was missing. It always seemed odd. The house seemed a little odd, and we never knew what it was because we didn't have photos. So here's the house before, and you can see this just never seemed right for some reason. And also in the attic of the garage behind it, we found about 6 pairs of shutters. And luckily, there were the shutters for the arch-top windows and the shutters for the curved windows on the side. So we were able to dig those out and replicate. So the original shutters are up there. These are replicated shutters here. And we were able to put this pergola detail back on the front, clean the brick, new windows. On the inside, because it had pretty much been office, went from single family to just straight office use. This was the living room. So this was the fireplace and the living room that went across the front of the house, but they needed offices, so they put walls up because it's a big room. And so first thing we did is we wanted to take these walls down. There's another one on the right, and we still put offices in here, but we use glass instead so that you could get the full sense of the room. And again, some of the old photos we got, this was a dining room, probably when the house was fairly new. And this is a dining room today. It was all basically there. We didn't do much of anything to this room, painted the ceiling. We rewired the whole building, added air conditioning, cooling in the whole building. So plumbing, all LED lighting, finishes, cleaned it up. This is the main kind of foyer area looking into what was the old dining room. And this is just it from the side. It's kind of an interesting house because it's a 6th Street address, but the door's on Myrtle on the side. But it's a great kind of arts and crafts era house.
This is the Selden house across the street next to what was the James McBrayer house and now the Catholic house. It was built in 1896 for 2 sisters, Joanna Selden and Emma Selden. They never married, and they lived there. They were from old Erie families. On their maternal side, they were related to the Sill family, Thomas Sill, who was a congressman and very important citizen of Erie. Their great uncle was Judah Colt, who, as you may know, was a land agent for the Pennsylvania Population Company that was really the first land developer in Erie. When they passed away, the house went to their nephew, George Selden, who was president of the Erie City Iron Works. The Seldens were also interrelated with the Griswolds, and we all remember Griswold Manufacturing Company. The house is of what would be described as Victorian eclectic style. It's kind of eclectic. It's got several different styles with it. But it required quite a little bit of work, and I'll ask Jeff about that.
So Tom mentioned canal side. The first building we looked at is in basically the path of the canal. Right about this area, there was kind of a pool, a pond, I'll call it a parking area for barges that extended over to this house because canal side is 2 buildings over. So when the canal closed, they filled it in, and you can see the path of the canal on 6th Street, 7th Street, or 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, where there's a dip and all the buildings lean a little. Because when they filled it in, they didn't fill it in to engineered standards that we do today. And this building, this is what it looked like when we got it. It had been a fraternity house for a long time too, and apartments, but it was pretty tired. And as we dug into it, we knew there was some unevenness to the house just by walking through it. And as we dug into it more, we had found that it had been sinking over time, and there had been other repairs. In particularly, the back of the house is 11 inches lower than the front of the house. So, but we found a fix under a fix under a fix. So at some point, it was kind of constantly moving. So the absolute first thing we wanted to do we didn't want to tear it down. We had the discussion. We proposed tearing it down, building a new house that looked just like it, but that wasn't in the mission of preserving the building. So the first thing we did is there's at least 100 steel rods around the whole basement footer that go down into the ground to get into the shale below. So theoretically, you could remove all the dirt under this and it would just be sitting there on stilts, basically. So we didn't try to level it. We just didn't want it moving anymore. So that was the first thing we did. And then another one where it was painted brick. So we remove all the paint, cut out all the mortar, point it all, remove some additions, trying to keep that detail up high that you can see was covered with vinyl. They started to cover it all up with vinyl and aluminum soffit. I never knew the story initially about the house, but it was always odd with these two bay windows, but it was two sisters that lived there, and they basically had their own living room. One had a living room, one had a living room, each had a bay window. I think that's why it is. I don't know why else it would be otherwise. And then that's what it looks like today. We're hoping to find old photos of it so we could put the porch back like it was, but we didn't. So this is just a new design that we felt was appropriate to the character of the house. This is the back of it. This is another kind of looking at the overall property where it's old concrete and just rock and gravel and mud puddles and weeds. And you can see here, I'll show you another picture here in a second, but this tree stump, how property lines, trees just grow and nobody wants to take credit for any of it. So they just grow and grow. I'll show you a photo here in a second of what we had here. But some additions on the back. We ended up, and I don't have a photo of it, it happened after this, but we ended up taking down this whole wall and completely reframing it and restructuring. And you can see here, this bay window here, it's basically to fall off the building. So we dismantled all that, rebuilt it all, put underpinning, rebuilt the foundation in this whole area. We put additions on so we could add some bathrooms. It was 5 apartments, it's now 4. And so this is it underway, and that's what it looks like now. And this is where I said each sister had their own living room. So there was a wall here that was taken down, but it was one living room and the other living room. And we put that back. There were angled fireplaces. We had salvaged. I also want to say is we salvage as much architectural material as we can. Sometimes we can't use it in that building, so we have a warehouse full of stuff. If anybody wants old doors, see me afterwards. But we had some mantles, and we were able to kind of recreate the 2 living rooms, although it's a kitchen and a living room now for this apartment. This is what the backyard looked like when we got it, and that's what Tom said, the McBriar house, which is now the Catholic house. And luckily, Gannon was fixing this building up while we were doing ours, so we kind of got a 2-for-1 deal going on here. But we had to, take all these trees down. There was a garage behind it that was later, early 20th century, and that's what it looked like. There was actually 2 apartments in here. There was one apartment on the first floor and then a second apartment upstairs. So we renovated that and made it 1 apartment with a garage, and that's what it looks like now. This is what after we gutted the apartment out, and what it looks like here. We've gone to just using oak flooring. It's all natural, man-made materials. That just find out that it's a better product. It lasts longer. It wears better. It can be fixed if it's damaged. And we tried some LVP and some vinyl stuff initially, but we've just gone away from that. And then this is what the front of it looks like. And you can see how the Catholic house got cleaned up over there.
These are 2 buildings here, obviously. The one on the left is originally was the Troy Steam Laundry, and the one on the right is the Joseph Sterrett House. The Joseph Sterrett House is one of the oldest houses in Erie, maybe, I believe, the oldest one on State Street. It was built around 1830. It's Federal-style house. Joseph Sterrett was an amazing person at that time in Erie. He was the owner and editor of the Erie Gazette, And he had an employee for 6 months or so by the name of Horace Greeley, who you might know, said, "Go west, young man, go west." He also was, Joseph Sterrett was a county commissioner. He was Burgess of Erie. That's before we were a city. It would be a mayor today. He was a state senator. He was a county judge. He was revenue commissioner. And he was postmaster appointed by Abraham Lincoln. When he died at 88, he was the oldest working journalist in Pennsylvania. In 1889, the Troy Laundry, which had started down at 3rd and State, bought the property and then built, in 1889, built the Troy Steam Laundry. That was a woman-owned business, a woman by the name of Annie Shanahan, an immigrant from Ireland, she and her mother. Her mother took in washing at her house on East 4th Street, and Annie somehow or other got you might call it a franchise with the Troy Steam Laundry. A Troy manufacturing company in Troy, New York, made equipment for laundries and for pressing shirt collars and shirts and things of that sort. And she was quite a business person. She went through 2 husbands. They presumably were the figureheads, but she was the one that was running the business well up into the 20th century. So you can see what the Sterrett House looked like, a classic federal period house, and the Troy Steam Laundry next door.
So this photo is really great to have because, as you'll see, the building changed over time. And without this one photograph, we really wouldn't have known exactly what to do with it. So this is right around turn of the century. This is a photo maybe from the 60s, 50s, 60s maybe. But this is when the Troy Laundry expanded. They built this building for their laundry business, and as they grew, they basically consumed the house. So this 1830 house got gutted, and the floor of the house, was up at this level, and you can see the doors gone already, but they lowered it down so it was flush, and they basically just became a shell, and blew big holes in it. And as they grew, they just kept building additions onto it, and at one point, the whole property was 100% building, and this is on State Street, right across from the Custom House. So this is what it evolved into in the 90s, 2000s. It became the American Surplus Store, and they just kind of kept covering it up and erasing any memory of what it used to look like. And I'm going to give John Banco credit. John's here. He was across the street at the art museum, knew the owners, knew that if he didn't step up and save it when they wanted to sell it, that somebody would have bulldozed it. And the last thing we need in downtown is a big, hole in the middle of 400 block of State Street. So John stepped up and bought it and kind of just managed the property, removed some of the additions, started to clean up the front. So this is what it looked like when we got it from him. And it's, still, it was basically a shell. This is based on that photograph, what we knew it could look like. And this is what we did to it. So the big changes here are we ended up rebuilding this whole facade. We put the cornice back on, squared it off, put an appropriate storefront in. The 1830s house made it back into residential. So now, as it sits today, there's 1 apartment, 2 apartments, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 apartments in here, and then we have the commercial storefront. But it was really critical to make it back to how it was. This was the back of it, off the alley, after some of the additions had been removed. And you can see here's the back, what was left of the back of the house. It was basically an L, but everything had got filled in, and this is what it looks like now. So we ended up rebuilding this back wing completely because it was just junk. It was falling in on itself, but we put it on the same footprint, Same, basically just made it like it never left. And then we made a courtyard here. So these are apartment 4 and apartment 5. We gave apartment 5 a balcony. And then this is, again, the back of the house that had been pretty much compromised. And then this is a courtyard we have in the back. So this is the apartment entrance from the parking lot behind it. Inside, this was the second floor of the house. They had used it for offices at one point, but again, was pretty much the only thing left from 1830 was that door. That was it. So we, knew what would be appropriate and kind of tried to treat the house as more federal period. And this was that same living room that's looking out on State Street. And then this is above what was the Troy Laundry building, which was strictly industrial building. And over here, we put apartments in there, but treated them differently because it's a different building, even though it's one property now. And we had an opportunity on the State Street side to put a balcony or a loft in this unit. So that goes up in the bedrooms up here. There's the custom house across the street. Another apartment, just more of like a loft feel. And then again, that's what the front looks like. So that was a great project.
This is the Galbraith Schenck Emmett House at 446 West 6th Street. And the way it appears here is a colonial revival from a 1929 renovation of the house, but originally it was built in 1890 as a Queen Anne by a very prominent lawyer by the name of John Galbraith. He was a son of a sitting judge. He sold it to Charles Schenck and around 1909, somewhere in there. And Schenck was president of the Henry Schenck Construction Company. They're the ones that built the library building. And we call it the Renaissance Building today. It was originally the Erie Trust Company building and a number of other very prominent buildings in Erie. In 1929, a new general manager came to the Erie locomotive works of General Electric, a man by the name of H.L.R. Emmett. There's Emmett Drive in Lawrence Park that's named after him. And he remodeled the house in 1929 to look as it does today, putting a colonial revival front on it, really, and in some of the interior spaces in the front of the house. They sold it, his family sold it somewhere around 1942 or so, and it became apartments. Quite frankly, I have a close association with it because as a 7-year-old kid, I came here to Erie from Buffalo in 1943. My grandfather, who raised me, was transferred here with the Navy, and until he could find a place to live, this was a boarding house, and I stayed with him in the front right room of this house. Didn't look quite like this, however, at that time. Okay.
So just what Tom was saying is before the Georgian remodel, the house went from here to here. So it was a 3-bay, and it went back and made an L. And the Georgian remodel, they basically put the 4th and 5th bays on and made it a symmetrical facade. So when we were working in this room, we dug up the floorboards and found an old patio, an old porch floor under this floor. So that, and you can see the way it was built and stuff, but this is one of several buildings that you'll see that evolve over time. So that's what it looks like today. This is what it looked like when we got it. Again, it was just kind of one of those buildings you just drive by, you don't even look at. It was, the core of the building was good, but it was just tired and overgrown. And you can see up here all the woodwork was covered with aluminum. It had just been not taken care of. So this is the back. When it was converted into apartments, they built this 8-unit concrete block addition on the back and connected it. So you went through, and we thought we were going to save it, but we decided not to, so we tore it down. And then here's the back of the house. And this is the old part. It had two different brick on it, the earlier brick and the later brick. So that's what it looks like now. The house had, I think, 7 apartments in it, and the addition had 8. And now the building has 6 apartments. And so another view of it with that addition, that was a bathroom that they added over this old porch. And we tore all that off and really this was the most exterior work on the building here, was putting this all back together. And then that's what it looks like now. And again, another view of it. But when they started going to the 3rd floors, they started adding fire escapes and stairs on the outside and adding bathrooms in here. So again, we just slowly peeled back the onion and got down to the core house, and that's what it looks like. So things like these iron railings we kept and restored. We ended up rebuilding the front porch completely. We found one right there in that corner, behind a downspout was one little bracket, because all these brackets were gone. So we found one right there, and then we were able to then replicate it and put it all back together. Copper gutters, slate roofs, new windows, all new HVAC, all new plumbing, fire protection, sprinkler system, LED lighting, door access control, just all that stuff. This was the room where Tom's grandfather had rented. It was like a formal living room, but when they try to get so many apartments in here, they take these big rooms and they add walls and they add the bathroom addition. So what was one bigger living room ended up being an apartment. And this is it now. We put it back as a living room. And this is that same room. There's a fireplace back here. They just put the kitchen cabinets right in front of the fireplace. And the refrigerator was just sitting out there like that. And that's the room now today. So just some quickly, typical kitchen, new kitchen. Some of the rooms were great. They were architecturally, they were fine, but they just needed to be cleaned up and all redone. And another one, this is an upstairs apartment. This is one where, that was the fireplace as we got it. And we actually had a fireplace out of the Selden house when we put those 2 living rooms back, we took that fireplace out and it fit perfect there, so we used it there. And I don't have a lot of basement photos, but because they all look like this. Every building we get, the basements are what you would expect the basements to be, old and musty and damp and, asbestos and pipes and rust and leaks and all that. So Jeffries Engineering is our engineer on this, Kim Jeffries. She single-handedly, almost 99% by herself, engineers the buildings, does all the drawings, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection. And these are kind of what they look like now. And again, another typical, this is the same basement in the house, but, pretty rough. And these are all the new modern, high efficiency systems that go into the building. Also, we started getting feedback from apartment tenants that they wanted garages. So we're starting to build more garages where we can. So this is just a new garage behind it.
This is the Connell Payne Wilson house, built in 1890 for Colonel Frank Connell, who came to Erie from Pittsburgh, originally from Ohio. He was Secretary Treasurer of Skinner Engine Company and Vice President of Union Iron Company. He didn't own it for too long a time, and the Payne family bought it. Frank Payne, who was president of Metric Metal became American Meter, and Metric Metal was founded by his father, Calvin Payne, who came to live here late in life and actually died in the house. Calvin Payne was an associate of John D. Rockefeller in the Pennsylvania oil fields, and that's where he got his start in piping and getting interested in meters for measuring gas flow. The Paynes, Frank Payne, went on to, as I said, I guess, be president of American Meter Company until he died. But in 1907, 1908, the father-son built the only automobile that was mass-produced for only 1 year, however, here in Erie, the Payne Modern, down at Modern Tool Works at 4th and State. The Paynes also were investors in the Lawrence Hotel Company. It was known as the Erie Hotel Company. Then, after World War II, Norman Wilson, the son of Norman Wilson, who was CEO of Hammermill Paper Company, bought the property. 2 years later, he had a tragic, I hit something, didn't I? He had a tragic accident, hit by a train or railroad crossing on Manchester Road. And 2 years later, his father then bought the property, Norman Wilson Sr., and lived there for the rest of his life. He also had a house out west in the county. But he had a 62-year career at Hammermill, started out as an office boy with Ernst Barron, and was Ernst Barron's successor at Hammermill.
I don't know how to get rid of this. Just
There we go.
okay. So this is, well, one of my favorite houses, and it's also our office now. So Kidder Architects is here, Jeffries Engineering, and Kidder Jeffries Construction. This is our new office. We moved in here in January. This is what it looked like shingle style. There's only a few shingle style houses on 6th Street, but this is what it looked like before. As Tom said, it was a residence up until about 1980, advertising firm. Then it was a group home for troubled young adolescents for about 25 years maybe. It was a sorority for a little while, and then we got it. So this is what it looked like before. One old photo of it, so we know it pretty much hasn't changed. The only thing was the porch was filled in, as we've seen before, and this is what it looked like when we got it. And then that's what it looks like today. So the back of it had an addition on it, and it wasn't a photo, but this had a steel fire escape on it too, because they had rooms on the 3rd floor. This is what it looks like now. And inside, this was one we thought about turning into apartments. It just didn't lay out well, so we kept it an office building. The floor plan is pretty much intact, but this was the whole entry hall as it looked when we got it. And this is what it looks like now. All the woodwork had been painted, and balusters have been missing. But again, it's another one. Every surface is touched. Every system is new. Every pipe, wire, ductwork. This was now our conference room. This is another one where we get calls. Somebody has been holding on to mantles for 20 years, and they finally decide to get them out of their garage. Call us, say, send me a photo, and then we say we'll take it, and we go get it. And this mantle was one that somebody had saved. It just fit perfect right on there. So that was nice. And then another one of our garages. And the garages take on the character of the house that they're with.
Now, this is Erie's favorite building. It ain't no more. And he'll show you what it looked like originally when the Charles M. Reed Jr. Mansion was there, and tragically was torn down back in the 60s. Today, I don't think we'd ever tear it down, even if it had some disabilities with it. I guess we can move down.
Yeah, we'll keep it going. So this is a building that I always called an intrusion. That's what they called it in the National Register. And then we ended up working in it for a couple of years for our office. And it was actually not bad looking out. It's just looking at it from the outside in. Wasn't great. Anyways, we all know, the Reed Mansion was removed around 1970 for it, and this is what it looked like. And then they built this, we call it AAA. And then this is what it looked like last week, and that's what it looks like today. When Tom acquired it, the plan was to tear it down, and then we thought, well, it's a good, sound, structural building. Let's try to reuse it. You might have seen the paper. We were going to renovate it for an Italian restaurant. We put out the bid, the numbers came back, just not sustainable. So the decision was to tear down. We're still working with Red Letter Hospitality to do a new building on the site for a restaurant. It's just much smaller, and then we have freedom to make it really fit in the neighborhood and not try to make something that doesn't fit in. I'll just talk about these, Tom.
Yeah.
So it was the other big house you saw up there next to it was torn down right around World War II, and the Baldwin Realty Company started building these brick 2-unit single-family houses kind of all around this area down here. This one came up for sale. It's the one you see when you leave the History Center parking lot. This is what it looks like now. You know, it was typical. We see these all over the lower west side. But it was a good solid house. We got it, did some changes to it, renovated it, and it's just a fully functioning, nice little rental property. Do you want to talk about this?
This is the Otto Germer Jr. house, also known as the Germer Walker House. Otto Germer, this was built in 1895. It's colonial revival style. Otto Germer Jr. was of the family, and he was an officer of Germer Stoves, which was originally Black & Germer Stoves. And he died quite young. He was 40 years old when he died. He lived a pretty full life, I guess you would say. And he had a lot of investments in oil and gas in Ohio and Kentucky. But in 1891, he was a member of the Cleveland Athletic Club, and they played the University of Michigan in football and beat them. And I'm always glad to hear when Michigan is beaten because I'm an Ohio State grad.
So this was just one of those houses that the previous owner really took good care of. And we've kept it occupied. And as people move out, we kind of do phased renovation to the apartments. And the first thing we did, though, this was the main lobby, the main foyer to the house. And that's what it looked like when we got it. And this is what it looks like now. We just cleaned it up and opened up a window that had been closed. And one thing about this is it has this pretty detailed baluster here, and they were missing, broken and stuff like that. And we thought, well, somebody can make it with CNC machine and should all be easy. And we got a quote, and it was like, that's crazy. So we ended up working with Gannon's Makerspace and 3D scanned the ones we were missing, and they 3D printed them. We needed, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12. And so there was a student project. We got Gannon involved, and we were able to replicate them. And once they're painted, you can't tell them apart. And they're actually better, more exact than what we were thinking we were getting. So this is just a nice house that we've just been maintaining.
Okay, this one is the Olds Sweet Norman house, built in 1884 for a very prominent lawyer by the name of Clark Olds. He had a son grow up here by the name of Irving S. Olds, a graduate of Erie High School 1903, Yale University, top honors at Harvard Law School. He came back to Erie to become a member of the Erie County Bar, but immediately went to Washington, D.C. and was a law clerk for Oliver Wendell Holmes. He went on to a White Shoe New York law firm where he became a partner for the rest of his life. But in the mid-30s, he went on the board of U.S. Steel, which was then headquartered in New York City. And in 1942, he became chairman and CEO of U.S. Steel up until 1950. So he took it through its heyday, its peak time during World War II. He had a 600-foot-long Great Lakes freighter named after him. He lived in New York City. He was on the board of the Metropolitan Museum, Lincoln Center, Shakespeare Festival, and a number of other things. He's a real success story that came out of that house on 7th Street. The house was then sold by that family to a doctor by the name of Dr. Sweet. And he was, do I have his name here? I don't. He was one of the original or early osteopathic physicians in Erie and in the country. He then passed his practice on to his son, and they practiced there for close to 50 years. They lived there and practiced there. And then Ron Norman, whom some of you I'm sure know, had his photographic studio there for 50 years. And we bought the property from Ron.
So this is what it looked like when we got it from Ron. The outside was a little tired. But anyways, that's what it looked like. Recently, this year, we've cleaned the brick, pointing everything, putting a brand new slate roof on it. We're going to be doing exterior woodwork, painting it here still this year, hopefully, and changing the color scheme. But that's what it looks like now. This is a brand new slate roof that was just finished a few weeks ago. Copper gutters and everything. These are just some general views of what it looks like now inside. The inside is actually very nice and very much intact. And just some of the detail that's still there that we'll keep. So the big thing here is that's the house up there. And once we're able to acquire that, we've been we worked with Gannon quite a while negotiating, and we're able to pick up the Carter Shannon house and Frederick Drecke house. And this is just a good view because this is one you might have heard about. But in May, after the school year's over, Gannon's going to tear down the dorm, Worley Hall, just get rid of it. They don't, it's obsolete for them. And then we're going to pick up Old Norman House and turn it 180 degrees and move it and plug it in right here on 6th Street. So, so this is a great way to understand, because you tell people and they may what I don't understand, but that's going to go right there, and then we'll have 3 houses in a row, and we're going to be renovating houses and leasing them all back to Gannon for different uses. So I don't know if we want to skim through this fairly quick.
Yeah,
but
we're running over, and bear with us if you want to hang around, or we can shut off. This is the Glover, Cleveland, Carter, Shannon house. The front part of the house that you see on the right there was really a 3-bay federal period house built in 1835 facing 6th Street. And it was built for a young woman by the name, her last name was, her name was Susan Shattuck. She was an adopted daughter of Rufus Reed. Rufus Reed was the father of Charles Manning Reed of the Erie Club. And he gave that house to her, ostensibly, I think, as a wedding present, because she married the rector, the man that was called the first true rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, Bennett Glover. He didn't live very long, and she married a man by the name of P.H. Ball, who worked for her adopted brother, Charles Reed, in Chicago. And he went into business with the son of Thomas Colt, who was the first mayor of Erie. But then they died off, and the house was sold in 1890 to Frank Cleveland. And he had the renovations done of the way the house looks today. It was done by an Erie architect by the name of Joseph Frank. Mr. Cleveland didn't last too long either, and he was sold to a man by the name of Ed Carter, who, I'll tell you, he ran every business in Erie, the telephone company, the gas company, the electric company. He was president of all of them. He also had a steamship company and a fishing company, and he was everywhere. And his prime company was the Pennsylvania Fireproofing Company. His daughter then succeeded to him, Maud Shannon, and her husband, Thomas Shannon. Mrs. Shannon, when she was a younger woman, had a dinner party at her house and is reported to have introduced Ernst Behrend to her good friend from Connecticut, Miss Brownell. And it turns out that Ernst Behrend from Hammermill married her. So she was a matchmaker, Maud Shannon. She ran the American Red Cross for 20-some years because at that time it was located right across 6th Street.
This It had been empty for about 10 years. Gannon moved their health clinic out of there, and it was just kind of just sitting there. And this is how it was when we got it. A couple old photos of it, what it looked like. It still looks kind of the same. This porch has been changed, but this is what it looks like today. We've paint stripped it, put a new roof on it. We're finishing up drawings right now. We're going to put 2 4-bedroom suites in there for Gannon students. So it's going to stay residential. This is the other side of it here and what it looks like now. It's kind of just underway, some interior shots of what it looks like. But it was, it was abandoned basically. We have the leaded stained glass windows. They're being restored right now down in Pittsburgh. We're going to put them back. And this is the third house that's part of this whole trifecta.
This is another Jarecki house. This is Frederick Jarecki, the brother of Alexander Jarecki. It was built between 1901 and 1903, and it's a Tudor revival. It was designed by the same architect, Frank Mead, from Cleveland, who did a lot of work in Shaker Heights and Bracknell in Cleveland. It was built by the Henry Schenck Company for $15,000, 1901. Fred Jarecki was 32 years old when he built that house. He died when he was 51. He was an executive at Jarecki Manufacturing. He was also a founder, an officer, and a director of Continental Rubber Company. His widow continued to live there. She remarried, and then she gifted it to Gannon in 1950, and it became a home for priests. So it always remained pretty much a single-family house.
Again, this is what it looked like. Since we got it, we put a roof on it, restored the stone, masonry. We've taken all storm windows off. We're going to be going out to bid on this. It's going to become Gannon's alumni house, development offices. We're kind of under the gun to have it done for August next year because it's their 100th anniversary, Gannon. But it's going to be offices. So it's another way. We're not changing the inside much. This is a 1906 photo of it and what it looks like today. Here's the dorm here that's going to be gone. So now we'll be able to see the back of the house again. This is the inside. It is really, really in good shape. The staircase, the dining room, it's untouched, the living room. And then here's the dorm, and then here's what we hope to do. Fixed up. It'll look better than that. And here's the 3 of them here. So this is just one. We buy up some property. We combine lots and subdivide and stuff like this. When we did the canal side, we moved the driveway to those first apartments from 5th Street rather than through the middle of the building. So we had some land behind. This is a brand new build on a vacant lot we had on 5th Street to just kind of fit into the neighborhood. This one.
This is the Jarecki Collins house. It was built by Alexander Jarecki for his daughter in 1927 as a wedding present. Her husband was Adrian Collins. He was a native of Australia, fought in World War I, was connected with the Jarecki Manufacturing Company. In fact, after the death of his father-in-law, he became the general manager, vice president and general manager. The Jareckis, or the Jarecki Collins, lived there for 54 years, and then the Pish family, and I'm sure a lot of you knew Bill Pish and his wife, they lived there for 40 years. It's an English Tudor revival. It's still a single-family house, and we like it very much.
And this is also a Frank Mead.
Oh, yes. Also.
Frank Mead out of Cleveland. So this is what it looks like now. This is what it looked like when we got it from the Pish family. Very much original. It needed a good bath and cleaned up. So we masonry restoration. All the leaded windows we took out and had them rebuilt, restored at the Pittsburgh stained glass studio. It was great because only having Tom being the third owner, we still have all the blueprints, we have all the specifications, all the receipts for all the materials ordered. It's just a great resource of information. This is the back that you don't really see now. Kim Jeffries did all the exterior lighting on it. We added air conditioning. So that's it from the back. Again, the great-granddaughter gave us photos. Here's a picture of it being built, under construction. And then here's a photo of it when it was just completed. So we have this great documentation. Some photos of the inside as it looks now. Again, we really didn't change anything, just cleaned it up. Living room, dining room, the main stair, and what it looks like at night.
Okay, this is known as the Walker Filer House. It was built in 1910. Again, this is a Frank Mead designed house as well. It was built for Edward Walker. He was a son of the first B.J. Walker. They were active at Erie Malleable Iron. In fact, he was a president of Erie Malleable Iron. Some of you may have known B.J. Walker, who was with AMSCO for many years. He was the son of the man in this house, Edward Walker. In 1933, Enoch Filer, a prominent lawyer in Erie, bought the house. He was one of the founders and first trustees of the Erie Endowment that became the Erie Community Foundation. He was on the board of just about every company. He was chairman of the board of Erie Malleable, and I think he was chairman of the board of Marine Bank as well. A very prominent family.
So this had been turned into apartments. We're keeping it apartments. This is before, kind of a couple months ago. We're finishing it up, hopefully in the next couple weeks. It's 4 apartments again. It's another one where we've gone completely through it. What's interesting though is in about early 1900s, it was in a magazine, Brick Builder. But these 2 houses, there's one next to it. This is our house, and this is one right next door. But they were, as Tom said, by Frank Mead. They were featured. But these 2 houses were built at the same time, and I think they said they were considered 2 small houses at Erie, PA. So that's some history.
The corner house was Rudolph Jarecki, who was the jeweler. So at 6th and Cherry, the Jarecki family had 3 corners of that particular street corner. Oh, well, some of you might remember Sophia's Tavern on Cherry Street between 5th and 6th. Sophia's Tavern ceased operation in 2019. It was in this building for 67 years, and all total with its prior location on West 3rd Street, it was in business for 79 years. It was built as a grocery store with an apartment above. At one time, Zay's Bakery was in there in the early 1940s.
So this is what it looked like when we got it. Here's a early photo of the Anheuser-Busch Clydesdales visiting Sophia's Tavern. This is it underway. Again, it's a full top to bottom, inside and out, with a commercial space on the first floor and an apartment above. And then that's it today. Kind of the only big change on the outside is they had done this storefront, this facade for the bar, and we wanted to open it back up. So we've made it much more transparent and put a small addition on the side. The tenant moving in there is Urban Honey Bakery. Jessica Schultz is here in the audience. We're super excited to have her in the neighborhood. She's at Urbaniacs now. This is going to be her new headquarters to make a lot of this for all of us to visit. She'll still be at Urbaniacs, but this is going to be her home base. We're looking for her to open in November, mid-November. So please come down to the neighborhood and visit her. Super, super good stuff. This is it from the inside. We did find a tin ceiling above from the original store. We had to take it down for fire rating, the ceiling, but we're putting in a new ceiling. This will be painted white, but this is going to be the retail area of the bakery.
This is going off 6th Street now. This is 8th and Cherry, the Thayer Thompson House, which by itself is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It was built in 1861 for Oscar Thayer, who was in the oil refinery business, but he only kept it a couple of years. and a man by the name of Victory Thompson bought it in 1863. He had the Thompson line on the Erie Extension Canal. He also got into the coal business with W.L. Scott. He had a son by the name of Clarence Thompson, whose daughter became Alice Wright. And some of you knew Ralph Wright from Reed Manufacturing. This was his mother. She grew up in this house.
So this is what it looked like when we got it. It is apartments now, or is apartments, and painted. Removed some of the trees, and then we've been paint stripping it, repointing it now. Currently, this is fairly recently. We're focusing on the exterior again, what it looked like, kind of in process. Took off a small addition, bought the backyard had been subdivided in some smaller houses. We've removed those, and this is we call it the barn. That's now part of the house again, and that's what it looks like now. We're going to keep it apartments, and that's the barn, and just some shots of the inside, what it looks like now. It's empty, but we're renovating. Right next door, we picked this one up with it. This will be 3 apartments. We'll renovate that also. I'll just talk about these are across from the Hagen History Center. We have these 2 houses. They're called the Olds. They're part of the Olds. There's 3 of these and 2 other ones. And these are just right now apartments, and we'll get to them at some point. Next to our office is Renderneck House, 1890s. We're going to renovate this apartments. We're going to renovate as apartments. We're just starting. We're going to peel off all the vinyl siding and aluminum, and we started to do that on the porch and found the wood siding and the detail, and we're just going to keep that.
I'll just add on that house. The original part of the house was built in 1866 for a man by the name of, I have it here somewhere, Silas Clark. He went on to be one of the founders of Pueblo, Colorado. William Rinderneck bought it in 1888 and made the changes that made it look pretty much like it does today. He was a cigar maker. And later on, John Brooks, a very prominent attorney, owned the house for 37 years.
The next house is right next door. It's kind of known as the Stone House, but it's Albert Jarecki House, about 1908.
Yes, 1910. And Albert Jarecki was an uncle of Alexander and Frederick Jarecki, and there'll be another one that will come up, Robert Jarecki. He was at one time president of Jarecki Manufacturing, but in his later life he was a director and vice president. It was designed, but we believe it was designed by Meade as well. It cost $27,400 and was built by the Kirshner brothers, which was a prominent building firm in Erie at the time. Mr. Jarecki was an investor in the Lawrence Hotel. He also owned a big interest in the Roosevelt Hotel and built more hotels in New York City. His wife she was the daughter of a mayor by the name of Hammond, and she was the widow of another mayor by the name of Brady.
So this is what it was when we got it. Between the house and the garage, there were 17 apartments, 3 of them in the basement. We promptly shut those down and moved the people out of the basement. The garage has 4 apartments, but we've been doing some exterior work on it. Here's a couple old photos. But we put a roof on it. We've cleaned the stone. We're just kind of, there's people living there, so we're going to get to this again eventually. Across the street, a Spencer House, a duplex, a townhouse has 7 apartments, fully occupied. We're just kind of waiting. It's down the list, but we'll get to that. Here's an old photo of 6th Street looking west. This is 1893. But that's the Spencer townhouse is there next to their parents' house, which is the Spencer Bed and Breakfast. And that's it today. We'll open the porches up eventually and kind of do our thing with this. Robert Jarecki, just down the street.
This is a brother of Alexander Jarecki and Frederick Jarecki. He succeeded his brother Robert as president of Jarecki Manufacturing. It was built in 1910. He was 32 years old when he built it. It would cost $35,000. And in 1910, he had a 4-car garage. Now, who had an automobile in 1910? Constable Brothers built the house. The Jarecki family lived there for 57 years, and then it served as a fraternity house and a group home. And my old classmate Jim Lee had his law office in there for many years.
So an old photo of it with his cars in the garage. And then so far we've cleaned the brick and pointing, and they just started putting scaffolding up today. We're putting a new slate roof on it, new gutters, and just kind of getting the outside cleaned up for now until the tenants move out. Whittier House, 530 in the same block. It's a pretty simple house, but it's an earlier house that had been remodeled. Kind of a simple looking thing. I don't know if you want to talk about that briefly.
Well, the main thing I want to mention, this was built by a man by the name of Asa Whittier, who came to Erie from New England. It turns out through some checking that I'm a 4th cousin 6 times removed from him. He sold it to a man by the name of Charles Converse, who was an interesting guy. He was a lawyer, an inventor, a composer, an author, and a manufacturer. He studied in Germany, studied music in Germany, went to law school at Albany Law School, was an editor of a newspaper in Washington or in New York City. He was known as Judge Converse, but one of his claims to fame, and he had some inventions to his name, but one of his claims to fame is that he was a composer of hymns, many hymns, including the music for What a Friend We Have in Jesus, and the orchestral overture, Hail Columbia. He was the secretary of the Burdett Morgan Company that came to Erie after the 1871 fire in Chicago, and he was with that company. The house was sold eventually to Gustave Fauré, who was an engineer that came here from France, and he's the one that changed it to the way it is today, from the frame house, put the brick on it, raised the house up, made it bigger. And then after that, the Weschler family was very prominent with it. Some of you know Kathy Weschler Rafferty and her sister Chris Weschler English. They owned the house for 44 years.
So this is just an exterior tune-up. We cleaned the brick, painted, the trim, doing some minor stuff inside. Another house that's right across from our office parking lot, Paul Wright House. It's just rental for now, and we'll fix this up at some point.
Paul Wright, I might add, was long time, almost 50 years, president of Reed Manufacturing. He was also a highway commissioner under Gifford Pinchot, who was a well-known name. The Pinchot roads were, it came from the administration. This is 608 Walnut, a Baldwin house built by G. Daniel Baldwin, who lived just down the block at 539 West 6th Street. This house was built in 1941, and for the first 26 years, the president of Griffin Manufacturing Company, William Griffin Sr., lived there. Gannon University had owned it for a good many years, and we acquired it from them.
So this is what it looks like now. Whoops. This is what it was when we got it. Just earlier this year, we just finished it. A single family, cleaned it up, cleaned the brick, just made it kind of a quaint little cottagey feel, and it's much improvement from what it was. This is a recent purchase, George Carroll House, 401 Peach. It had been a bed and breakfast for probably 20 years, an office. Ham had owned it at one point. They were going to tear it down in the mid-90s. But anyways, we just picked this up. We'll probably put apartments in it. Here's an old photo of it with a wraparound porch, if you can see that, and what it looks like today. So that's fairly recent. Right next door, 19 West 4th, we just picked up also the Old Knights Pizza. We started doing exterior work on it recently, and we're talking to a commercial tenant that'll take the whole building, and this is what it'll look like next year when we're done with it. The last building, so the last one, Tom, if you want to just talk.
Yeah, I'll just quickly talk about it. It was built in 1890. It's a Victorian eclectic style. It was built for Ricardo St. Philip Lowry. He was the son of a Venezuelan-born U.S. Navy flag officer, a Commodore, a hero in the Civil War. But he had come to Erie to serve just before the Civil War, to serve on the USS Michigan. And then he met an Erie woman by the name of Catherine Courtwright, which was an old Erie County name. And their son then came back to Erie and was educated here, built this house. He was active in Erie life. They had two sons. The older son graduated from the Naval Academy in 1911, and in 1914, with our incursion with Mexico in the slight Mexican War we had, at Veracruz, he got the Medal of Honor. He served through World War I into the 20s, resigned from the Navy, went back on active duty in World War II, and retired as a Rear Admiral. His brother went with a very prominent law firm in New York after going to Harvard and Yale, and he retired from the Justice Department.
And we're based.
Both boys were educated in Erie public schools.
So this house is not one of the trust's properties, but it's part of the Erie Community Foundation now. They needed more office space. This is what it looked like. It had been an apartment building since the 80s. It had a couple fires in it. The last fire kind of did the job to it, burned the roof off the back. So this is what it was when we got it. This is what the back looked like. And that's what it looks like now. It's office space for the Community Foundation. And then there was a need for some additional space, a new larger boardroom. So behind it, we tore down a small garage and designed this two-story office building that looks like a carriage house for the Lowry House. So that's completed recently. It's connected to the Siegel House garage, but it looks like it's part of the Lowry House. So that's the new building. Just to finish up quickly, we're doing more than just buildings and houses. Gannon had started a sidewalk lighting project back in the last 20 years or so, but they only did where they had property. So we've been able to do lighting on the north side of the 300 through 600 block of 6th Street. And now both sides of the street are lit, much safer environment, much more friendly environment for the residents and even just driving down the street. And the last thing here is as we complete a project, Tom and Carl Anderson do the research on the building, put these plaques on every building at the front door so anybody can learn about the history. And then I just want to finish up acknowledging a couple people. The Historic Erie Preservation Trust is Tom Hagen. Mike Glass retired from Erie Insurance Construction for about 2 hours, and then Tom hired him to be the project manager for the trust. Cal Pfeiffer is a trustee with Tom, and I'm a trustee also. My office, I'm just got Sean and Laura in my office. Jeffries Construction, I mentioned Kim. She's the one that doesn't get any recognition because all her stuff is hidden or in the basement where nobody goes. Kidder Jeffries Construction, Mike Jeffries, my partner on that. We've been managing all the construction. I have to give credit to Weiss Early Landscaping because they do all the landscape design, installation, and maintenance. The grass is really green, which is good. And then I have to give credit to RJ Fiorenzo, the photographer we used. About 80% of the photos you've seen today are RJ's. He's here in the audience. He's been with us a long time. He's the first person in when we buy a property, so we have a documentation of what it is the minute we buy it. And then he goes in, the last person in, and documents it afterwards. And that's why we, have these great photos, is because of RJ. And that's it. So I know we went long. Thank you.